We all heard it said, you are running out of time. That is the biggest crock of shit ever told. Let us have a different perspective on time. Let us do the math. For example, the average South African lives to be 78. If your loved one is 75 and you see them twice a year, statistically we'll only have 6 more visits with them. This I call reverse engineering. This makes me super present when spending time with my loved ones. I'm 55, and using the 78 number, it means I have only 23 summers left. So it really helps me to focus in on how I spend that time and with whom. I want to put as much stuff on my plate as possible. In 100 years, no one will have any memory of you, so don't sweat the small stuff. Take risks and don't care what other people think of you. This lockdown was the time when we had low time to determine how to rise again. I want you to use it wisely. If you are 40, you can hear that constant whisper in your ear. Live, live, I'm coming for you. Your question is, who are you? It's me, Dave. Now, you have to look at our lives. The minute a child is born, the minute you come out of your mother's birth canal, what are the two things waiting for you outside? It's life and death. And if a child comes out dead, they always say it's stillbirth. But the minute and that automatically means that death is won. But if the child comes out alive, now it becomes the responsibility of the grown-ups or the responsibility of the parents to surround that child, to create a ring of life so that death does not come in. Death is never far away from life. Death is constantly your shadow. Now, as you start growing up, as a little baby, if the parents don't protect this child, if you don't put a fence or a protective net around your net, the child will drown. If you don't keep a protective fence around untrained animals, the child will die. If you don't put a protective net or protective wall around your electric plugs, the child will die. Because a child does not know death. And the fact that the child does not know death does not mean that death won't snatch the child. Death is constantly in constant fight with life, and death wants to win. As our kids start growing up and they start experimenting with life, they go out, they start drinking, they start doing drugs. He gets into that car and the speedometer says that the car can go up to 200 kilometers an hour. His friend says, why are you driving like Miss Daisy? Why are you driving like an old woman? Why don't you step on it? Now, who's moving closer as that boy steps onto the accelerator? It's death. Anytime he takes a puff of that ganja, death moves closer. Anytime he floors the accelerator to go over 100, 120, 150, death moves closer. Anytime he speeds without wearing a seatbelt, death moves closer. And one day, death snatches it. But as we get older, as you get into your 40s, as you get into your 50s, all of a sudden you hear this constant voice in your ear, keeps on telling you, I'm coming for you. And your question is always, who are you? When you look back, death is facing you. And what do we do to keep death away? One, we start taking care of ourselves as we get into our 40s, 50s. We start to exercise. We start to eat right. We start going to bed on time. We stop things like smoking. We avoid junk. We make sure that when we get into the car, what is the first thing that you put on? You put on your speed belt, your seat belt. While driving on the highway, you don't go into the fast highway. You start to observe and obey and subject yourself to the speed limits on the highway. Because over time, we want to widen the gap between ourselves and death. But as the Quran clearly says, death eventually will overcome you. Over time, death will overcome us. There's so many of us that are in that grave, in that cemetery, There are so many people that are in hospital now that don't belong there. It's just because they've given death chance to snatch their life earlier. Our job is to keep our distance with death as far wide as possible. And the best thing you can do that is to invest in yourself. What is the voice saying?